used to this. You have to get some stuff out when you're walking up, because the bell hasn't started yet. I've got 7 minutes worth plus, so don't ask for intervention. You're not going to get one. Please don't ask me. I'm not being ignorant or anything, but when he presses that, when I start, guys, I have to get this out. Okay? Happy enough? Mr. President, okay. The abiding key to peace, stability, well-being and prosperity is in fact democracy. Many of the speakers today have referenced that. Some 25 years ago, this wee country created with what some have described as having ugly scaffolding, an agreement that had the blessing and endorsement of over 71% of the population of Northern Ireland. It perhaps was the first time in our history that Unionists, Nationalists and other came together to agree on the way forward and a way to create a better future. As someone who was born directly at the halfway mark of Northern Ireland's centenary in 1972, and one who has witnessed both first-hand and through osmosis the wickedness, the trauma caused by the Troubles, I still support and champion an agreement that was remarkable in what it achieved and what it delivered. The Good Friday Belfast Agreement heralded a life and future for my children and all of us, relatively free from the spectre of malevolent and violent hands of terrorists and paramilitaries from across all of our communities. The delivery of this agreement was costly to many, especially those who served, and I was one of those, a former prison officer and one who had many friends who served selflessly in our security forces. I can testify that agreeing to that, the cost was huge. However, I still believe that peace was a prize worth grabbing. Today's debate, however, is about the impact of the Northern Ireland Protocol on Northern Ireland, and more importantly, from my perspective, to accurately outline the negative impact of the same. They say that success has many fathers. This is true right around the globe. And the Good Friday Agreement is perhaps the perfect example of that. An agreement achieved with support from the majority of political parties here in Northern Ireland, with support from the United Kingdom Government and the Government of the Republic of Ireland, along with welcome assistance from senior US politicians and their government administration. And for years, people have proudly used and heralded their involvement. They're not slow to tell us. But sadly, their understanding of the agreement and its 3 strands show that there evidently is almost zero bipartisanship. However, it would be wrong to ignore, it has been mentioned, and it would be mischievous of me to not hold to the point that we are in this position today due to Brexit, which is indeed the parent of the protocol. That is the parent of the protocol, and I can accept that. But I and my party warned and campaigned against Brexit, like many within this room. We did this not solely from a Northern Irish Unionist perspective, but indeed from a United Kingdom Unionist perspective. It was clear that Northern Ireland, due to its land border, would bear much of the impact and cost, both fiscally and as a society. But similarly, when the protocol was being mooted, we railed against it and we warned that it would most certainly deliver an Irish sea border. Sadly, some Unionists at that point called it a serious and sensible way forward. We've all made mistakes. How little we understood of the complexity and the implications and the danger that the protocol actually posed, not only to swathes of the small and medium businesses that underpin our economy, but indeed the very agreement that brought peace to our beleaguered country. Today we're debating from each side of the argument. This is good and should be welcomed. This is what these institutions are supposed to do, and sadly my first point is all too obvious. We do not have a functioning assembly or executive. The protocol has unarguably created instability for this legislature, whether we like it or whether we don't. We heard and saw the words and visuals that emanated from nationalist and Republican politicians from this island, both north and south, in what turned out to be a stupendously partisan show of support from the Biden administration. That any border on this island between north and south delivered as a result of Brexit or any protocol would be contrary to the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. The threat of resultant unrest quite obviously didn't go unnoticed by people like myself. But I need to be clear at this point, not once did the Ulster Unionist Party suggest that a land border could or should be the case. Not once did I hear or see an Ulster Unionist seek the imposition of a land border to deliver on Brexit, nor did I hear a Unionist or other politician argue that a land border wouldn't upset the balance of the Good Friday Belfast Agreement. The awareness of politicians across the piece on this matter was pretty much unanimous. This was a demonstration that the Belfast Good Friday Agreement was of huge import and should not be tampered with in regard to this protocol. Now, one could be forgiven for expecting reciprocal understanding of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement and its 3 strands. What it underpins for each community, what was democratically legislated for, and what delivered peace to all of us sitting in this chamber today. Sadly, this has turned out to not be the case. The Irish Sea Border or Protocol, which was created in a vacuum of democratic deficit of 3 years here without an assembly and executive due to the failure of Sinn Féin to respect democracy, coupled with the DUP, which squandered any influence it had at Westminster in the creation of a Brexit dividend, which might actually have seen Northern Ireland prosper properly, but actually cement its credentials as part of the UK. Many, if not all of you, will know that I'm not a politician that is prone to hyperbole or exaggeration, nor do I mischievously seek to undermine any party, any community, or any individual, or their legitimate right to see the Belfast Good Friday Agreement upheld. Sadly, upon delivery and implementation, it should have been obvious that the Northern Ireland Protocol was not only partisan in regard to the sovereignty of the EU single market and trade laws, but undermined the core basis of how the Good Friday Agreement is actually structured. It should have been clear and understood that Strand 1 has been ignored and that Strands 2 and 3 were afforded high regard. There could and should be much debate as to why this became the case. A Conservative government that was high on the fumes of getting Brexit done, or an EU that were intent on making the Brits pay for leaving the club. The truth is likely to be both. Sadly, what was birthed has created an instability that the people of Northern Ireland could not, should not, and will not afford. Addressing the democratic deficit for all of us in Northern Ireland and fixing the imbalance of disregarding Strand 1 of the Good Friday Agreement should provide those negotiating a solution impetus to actually and accurately be able to put their names to an understanding of upholding all angles and commitments to the various communities under the Good Friday Agreement. At a meeting recently with the Ways and Means Committee from the US here at Stormont, and amongst other questions and queries, I asked Richie Neal, did the phrase "suck it up" resonate in America with the Biden administration? He said that he understood it. I then pointed out to him that the "suck it up" message from politicians, not only on this island but indeed the EU and the US, was entirely the message that the unionist community were receiving loud and clear, and that message in no way reflected any bipartisan commitment to peace and stability. My second point, and one if you'll indulge me, which is widely debated and harder to pin down, is the financial impact of the protocol. When we look at the facts, we must start from the point that only 5 to 10% of the protocol has actually been implemented. Just last week at the Northern Ireland Affairs Select Committee, we heard from a leading haulier who said that the full implementation would grind the haulage business in Northern Ireland to a halt within 48 hours. Locally, I'm aware of one company who benefited from the protocol significantly, and much is made of this. However, when you unpick the detail, the reason that business was successful is because they invested £250,000 up front to be protocol ready. They had the money. But actually, the smaller businesses that went under, who couldn't compete and weren't protocol ready, were subsumed into the bigger business. Is this really the financial benefit of the protocol? And just to finish, we really must be clear and unanimous that not only would the rigorous or further implementation of the protocol be destabilising for Northern Ireland, but it would be disastrous for the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, which was hard won, brought peace and offered a better future for all of our families across Northern Ireland and this island. Thank you.